In 2018, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison became the first African-American elected to a state position in Minnesota. And since then, he's overseen the case of the killing of George Floyd in police custody, and he's witnessed months of unrest in Minneapolis as a result of it.
Major issues have, of course, come to the fore during his tenure, including policing and a progressive wave that has roots in Minnesota. And he's here to talk about all of that and also share his thoughts on the Democratic convention. Welcome to the show, Attorney General.
Good to see you, sir.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So first, just give us an update on the ground there from Minnesota. It's obviously the place that sparked a nationwide protest movement. What does that look like there? What sort of policy reforms look like may come out of it?
Well, we did pass a major police accountability bill this state legislative session. It involved everything from banning use of certain chokeholds to data collection and a host of other reforms. They even took a stab at arbitration reform, which is really important because a lot of times chiefs will fire cops who really violate departmental norms, but then just get restored to the force by an arbitrator, nameless, faceless, no accountability. So there have been a number of good steps forward, and that's good. People are still protesting. They're still raising the issues. They're still demanding greater change. The city council tried to change the name of the police department to the Department of Public Safety and Violence Reduction. That effort is slowed, but it's not stopped. So there's still a number of things happening, and there is a transformation of how we do public safety in Minneapolis going on right now.
Mr. Attorney General, I also wanted to ask you about kind of some of the aftermath, the destruction and the rioting that we saw. I've seen that reports from the from the Star Tribune there, that businesses are reporting that they're going to have to pay taxes, permits, and they haven't seen the city and the state kind of step up in terms of clearing up rubble and so they can get back to business. Is there anything, I don't know if your office is involved in that. Does that concern you? What do you think about that?
It certainly does concern me. My office does not have a direct role in that, but we are on hand to advocate for small businesses as much as we can. I think that there is a sense of urgency. People understand that it's a problem and it needs to be addressed, but there was an extensive amount of damage, and so there's a lot to clean up. So I think that the city is coming together. People understand that changes need to happen. Both the governor and the mayor are committed to it. I'm committed to it. And we just need the small business people to keep on complaining so that nobody ever takes their attention away from the needs of that really critical part of our community.
And what has the reaction locally been to the fact that, that the actions there in Minneapolis helped spark a nationwide protest movement, according to the New York Times, the largest potentially in American history? What has that felt like on the ground? How have people seen their role in that process?
Well, I think Minneapolis has birthed some leaders and offered some real leadership. People like Candace Montgomery were known around town here, but we've seen them all over the national and even international media. We've seen young leaders here who have been organizing in the street for everything from climate issues to policing to criminal justice reform. A young woman named Leslie Redmond, 28-year-old president of the NAACP in Minneapolis. Now we see her speaking on MSNBC and giving voice to the issues that people are facing. So I think we've offered leadership to the country. We began to really talk about how we reset a relationship between community and police that I think will be to the benefit of both. And so, it's something that I think is important. At the same time, we've gone through our own struggles with this process of change. As is pointed out already, we're still trying to clean out the rubble. We're still working on other issues of public safety. We're still trying to continue the reform drive forward. And so it has its struggles as well.
Well, sir, there was also, you said previously there wasn't that much damage, but they actually found a charred body in some of the remains of what we saw there. Is there any update on the investigation? Because I know that your office has been involved somewhat in that.
Maybe I misspoke, but I don't think I said there wasn't that much damage. I said there was a lot of damage, which is why it's taking some time to get it all cleaned up. That was the point I was trying to make. So my office does criminal prosecutions when counties ask us to or when the governor asks us to. So if a crime happens and say Hennepin County or Ramsey County, the likelihood is that those counties will handle that, because generally we get called in when one of the outstate counties has a homicide. Now, that doesn't mean we're not very concerned. We are very concerned. I continue to use the bully pulpit to talk about the urgency of public safety and making sure that we have streets that are safe, that people can walk down, and that people can have a certain sense of confidence that they will be safe wherever they go. So that is a critical issue for me, but my direct jurisdiction is not on that. That would be Minneapolis Police and Hennepin County Attorney's Office, with us playing a supportive role.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, too, about how you see sort of the future of the Democratic Party. Obviously, you're a Bernie Sanders supporter before, ran to be chair of the DNC, narrowly lost that out to Tom Perez with, some of the bigwigs in the party, Barack Obama and others getting involved to make sure that Perez ended up being at the helm of the DNC. How do you make sense of the fact that, on the one hand, we have Joe Biden as the Democratic standard bearer, who's, lifelong sort of centrist, moderate kind of a guy, bringing Kamala Harris, so I think it's fair to say her record's fairly mixed, in terms of her ideology. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people like Cori Bush, you got people like Jamal Bowman, you got people like Mondaire Jones, who are winning these massive upset victories, these new progressive firebrands coming into the House. What is the current state of the Democratic Party? Where do you think it's heading? And what do you think is the role of the left and progressives in a potential Biden administration?
If I was going to describe the state of the Democratic Party right now, I would say on the one hand, you have people whose aspiration is to be better than Trump. And on the other hand, you have people whose aspiration is to spread prosperity across the poor and middle class in America. One group, they want to talk about how bad Trump is. Another group wants to talk about how tough our lives are when it comes to affording pharmaceutical drugs like insulin, housing, college affordability, stagnant wages. That's the conversation on one side. And on the other side, it's like, hey, isn't Trump really a challenge to our core values, and don't we need to get rid of him? So that's kind of where people are at. There is an important distinction to be made there. First of all, we all can come together because all of us agree that Trump has to go, and most of us can agree that the status quo economically and socially is not working for the majority of the American people. So we can come together, but at the end of the day, I think that if you look at leaders like AOC, Ilhan, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, they're not going to stop talking about how Americans just cannot afford our lives, and how the income disparities and wealth disparities that have grown over the last 40 years are unacceptable, and how people got to have a voice on the job. We've got to strengthen the union movement, and how, we have to be able to live with this economy and stop just pouring fossil fuels into the air and creating greenhouse gas problems for this world that we're trying to live in. So you're going to continue to see those people responding to the urgency of the moment because they're dealing with constituents who are dealing with those problems. And on the other side, you're going to have people who are trying to hold on to some form of a status quo and try to make marginal change and hope that's good enough. I'm betting on the progressives.
Sir, so as a leader in the progressive movement and in your party, if Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris ascend to the presidency and to the vice presidency, do you plan on trying to hold them to account from the leftist part of your party?
Well, as you notice, I'm not using left-right dynamic. I mean, I'll allow other people to describe it that way if they want to. What I'm talking about is responding to the needs of people. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about massive student loan debt. I'm talking about concentrating markets in nearly every single industry you can imagine, whether it's telecom, whether it's meat, whether it's beer, whatever it is, 3 or 4 industries control everything, and they don't stop at just reaping monopoly profits. They move forward and try to buy our politics and our democracy. These are the essential problems. Now, some people can't resist the need to describe that in left-right terms, but I think that there's a lot of room for people who some might call left to reach out to folks who are pretty socially conservative and say, wouldn't you like to be able to say no to Bayer and Monsanto as they're telling you what kind of seed you're going to get? Wouldn't you like to be able to say to John Deere that, yes, you can fix your tractor if you want to? I mean, there are some coalitions that are possible given the fact that many of these leaders like Jamal Bowman and AOC and Mark Pocan and Pramila Jayapal, they are trying to fix problems that are deep-seated, rooted in historic shifts in our economy. I just hope, I will tell you this, people who might be described as more centrist have the opportunity to create a historic presidency with Joe Biden. Never forget that it was Lyndon Johnson, who was a fairly socially conservative Southern Dixiecrat, who ushered forth more civil rights legislation than perhaps anyone. Never forget that it was Nixon who signed the Environmental Protection Act. You can have centrist and even conservative leaders do amazingly progressive things if the movement demands it. And so what I say is, let's keep on organizing, keep on calling, keep on Zooming and Skyping and knocking on doors, keep on engaging people, and keep on demanding that our leaders respond to the urgent issues that Americans are facing at the kitchen table and in their communities. And some people will call it left, some people call it right, but that's what I think.
All right, Attorney General, we're grateful for your time this morning. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next on Rising, Trump is saying that Biden is a Trojan horse for socialism. We're going to talk about that when Rising continues.